I'm going to take just a moment and leave you with something to reflect on this week. So last week I was traveling and I ended up taking 4 Uber rides here and there from the airport to the hotel and so on. Every ride was a little different with the driver. On my last ride home, I got to talking to the woman driving the Uber, and she said, well, I don't pick up anybody with under a 4 rating. And I said, you mean like riders are rated? She's like, absolutely. I said, so I have a rating. She's like, yes, it's right on your app. So of course I went right on there and found out my rating, which was 4.86. And I immediately thought, who didn't rate me a 5? Really, I was shocked. So I said, well, what do you do to get rated? And she said, well, we do timeliness, courteous, safety. I thought, I'm timely, I'm courteous, I'm safe. And I said, well, do you just pick random people? She said, oh no, we cannot pick up, we are not released to pick up another rider until we rate the rider that just got out of our car. So, I guess I'll have to be more timely, more courteous, and more safe. I got to thinking about being rated, and I thought about this series we've been doing, kind of Meals with Jesus, and I thought, I think he would have gotten a really bad rating as a dinner guest. Seriously, he would never been invited to another meal. He ate with the wrong people. Often uninvited guests would show up with him and create an awkward and uncomfortable social situation, and he was outspoken, impolite, and bordering on rude at dinner. There's never a record of him saying, this meal was really delicious and what great company. We find in the gospel that Steve read that the Pharisee, who's unnamed except that he was a religious leader, invites him to dinner. And we want to give this religious leader some credit because even with Jesus' poor rating, and even with him saying some pretty uncomfortable things and downright controversial things before this took place, the religious leader invites him to dinner, maybe thinking he's going to change his mind, maybe persuade him to tone down his rhetoric just a little bit and to be a little more reasonable. Now, I want to contextualize this, that this is an intra-religious dialogue. It's a dialogue among Jews about Judaism, like the United Methodist Church is in the midst of having a dialogue about who's in and who's out. Are you with me? And the Pharisees were doing their best, but they, like many of us in our own tradition, were missing the mark. They were good at getting everything right externally, but what this impolite dinner guest was telling them, that you could set the table with well-washed dishes and a nicely appointed tablecloth, and while lovely, they were missing the point. For Jesus says to them, you wash the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside, what's going on inside? You tithe, you give of yourself, but you neglect the justice and the love of God, and it is these that you ought to be working on. Everything looks okay on the outside, but it's not right on the inside. And as the children pointed out in their version of the story, if you heard it, it's what's on the inside that matters. And Jesus was calling out people's religious hypocrisy and their cultural and classist snobbery. He basically was saying, you know what, don't worry so much about washing your coffee cup. Worry about what's going on inside of you. Jesus was outspoken. And why? Because so much was at stake. I heard his words today through the voice of Greta Thunberg, that 16-year-old Swedish activist who spoke at the United Nations. Did you hear her speech? This is wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school and on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? How dare you, she said. You've stolen my dreams and my childhood. People are suffering. Ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? You are failing us. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now is where we draw the line. The world is waking up and change is coming, whether you like it or not. Then she said, thank you, and sat down. She's outspoken because so much is at stake. And she stands on the shoulders of other youth who have gone before, who have been outspoken and didn't get the coverage, the media coverage that she got. So here's what I want to say to us, dear friends, in just a couple minutes here. As progressive Christians, we are not extremist. We're not loud. We're not rude. Right? We're nice people. Sometimes. We try to get our inclusive theology right. We want to be progressive. But do we neglect justice and the love of God? Because those two can never be separated. If you consider yourself a loving person, you must be a justice-seeking person, because those two can never be undone. As Cornel West says, justice is what love looks like in public. We want to be nice. We want to be polite. We want people to like us. We don't want to add to the polarization, so we are afraid to speak out. We don't want to offend. We want to include everyone, but sometimes by trying to include everyone, we become complicit in the great exclusion that is going on. I want to be outspoken. I know something new and completely different today. I want to be outspoken that all the things going on in our country, let me just choose one thing. That this week, they've put a cap on refugees that is the lowest since 1980. We have the highest refugee situation in the world, perhaps that there has ever been. The United States will accept fewer refugees over the coming year than ever, 18,000 at most, down from a cap of 110,000 just 2 years ago. And a new executive order will allow state and local authorities to block refugees from settling in their areas. And here's what I want to say. There's a border in our country. There's a border there because there's a border here. There's a border in our country because it reflects the borders in our hearts. And that's exactly the message that Jesus was communicating in that day. I'm all for manners and civility, all for politeness. But sometimes when so much is at stake, it's time to be outspoken. Oh, she's really outspoken. That's not really considered a compliment. It's kind of a code word for little angry, little assertive, little direct, especially for women. I notice it's only the women saying amen right now, but that's okay. That's all right. But please hear me. There's a border there because there's a border here. And how do we begin to break down those borders here? And I want to suggest that one way is by becoming more outspoken about the things that are so fundamentally wrong, socially, humanly, human to human. I don't want you to be mean. but I want you to be loud. I didn't want you to other people, but I want us to build bridges, to listen to stories so that we can speak up and speak out against cruelty, against inhumaneness, and against those things that bind us all. Because until we can all see each other, none of us are fully human. And other people's freedom is bound up with our own liberation. So grab your coffee cup, even if it's dirty. Be an impolite guest if you need to be. But let's speak up, because so much is at stake. Amen. Amen.